Take them out. So I think you see some kind of pattern here. Emptiness keeps coming up with nirvana. Nirvana is what Buddha is telling these bodhisattvas to go get for people or to bring to people. And there seems to be, on one hand, there's some kind of relation between being a bodhisattva and seeing emptiness. And then sometimes people get confused between the two. And I think, first I'll talk about the similarity, and then I'll talk about how they're not the same. Okay? And for this, you have to understand one of the ways of dividing bodhicitta. Okay? It's not the only way, and it's not the only division into two, but it is the one that's on your homework, okay? Say kunzo, semge. Kunzo, semge. Buddhism divides reality into two types. One is called ultimate reality, which is a synonym for emptiness, okay? And the other is called fake reality, which seems to be a contradiction of terms. You know, if it's real, it shouldn't be fake. Fake means it looks to be self-existent, but it's not. And that's what fake means. I like to call it deceptive reality. Okay? It deceives you. It tricks you. To anyone but an Arya, it looks one way, but it really is a different way. Okay? And that's called kunzop demba, or deceptive reality. It's what people translate as relative truth, which is a bad translation. Okay? The Tibetan word is kunzop, which means deceptive. Why? Because it looks one way, and it really is something else. Can there be such a thing as a fake thing which is real? In a sense. It's artificial, but it functions. Does that make sense? Yeah. You know, Dairy Dream is a coffee lightener, but it's not real. So it functions. As it is a coffee lightener, it's not cream. It's Dairy Dream, okay? Okay, that's the point. Okay, maybe it's artificial, but it works. Okay. So kunzop this is a different kunzop, by the way. This kunzop is talking about as opposed to ultimate bodhicitta. So kunzop, I don't know how you want to translate it, but it's something like, you could call it deceptive bodhicitta, or you could call it regular bodhicitta, how's that, or something like that. Okay. It's sort of like regular bodhicitta in that it's focusing on regular reality. Okay? It's not focusing on emptiness. There is a version of it that's close to focusing on emptiness, and we'll talk about that. But in general, this is plain old bodhicitta. This is the bodhicitta that you always hear about. This is the one where you're going out and lovey-dovey with every sentient being. Okay? That's kunzop semke. That's normal bodhicitta. Okay? Then there's a thing called ultimate bodhicitta. Say dundam, semke. Dundam, semke. Dundam is ultimate. And it's the word that's used in ultimate reality. So Dundam Semke, ultimate bodhicitta, is, what would you guess? It is the direct perception of emptiness. Okay? It is the direct perception of emptiness. During that time, can your mind have in it the two elements of bodhicitta? What were the two focuses? Focusing on sentient beings. By the way, I'll say just a brief aside right here. Chonidapa Sheduk makes a big point. He says, all sentient beings includes you. He says, don't leave yourself out. All sentient beings includes you. It's not just other people. It's other people, and understood that you're also including. You'd like to get enlightenment for number one as well. Okay, so no problem there. No contradiction there. And we'll talk more about that. So anyway, Dundam Semke, can you focus on other living beings? And can you focus on wanting to get enlightenment during the direct perception of emptiness? No. Totally impossible. You cannot have a conscious thought at that moment. Totally impossible, because that conscious thought is not ultimate reality. By the way, the easy check, if anything is ultimate reality or not, one of the easy checks is it negative or positive? Is it an absence of something or a presence of something? Okay? Because ultimate reality or emptiness is an... I gave you the clue. Is an absence of something. Okay? It's just the fact that something ain't there. And that's negative. That's just something missing. Ultimate reality, emptiness, something missing, all the same thing. Okay? So if you want to check, if somebody says, I saw emptiness, you say, what was it like? You say, it was green. You say, oh, green is not negative. No, you can always, it's a very simple litmus test. Now, all negatives are not emptiness, but if it's a positive, you can throw the guy out right away. You say, show him the door. So you got ultimate bodhicitta is perceiving emptiness directly. And whoa. I think we got to take this dude out. Yeah. I'll squash a sentient being while talking about him. Thanks. I think we got a ladybug too over here. Hey. No. Okay. So those are the two kinds of bodhicitta, and one of them is not focused on sentient beings and not focused on enlightenment either, and it's just called bodhicitta, okay? But what I'm trying to say is that these two things are often coming together. And I'll give you another example. The opening lines of Madhyamika Avatara, which is the most important book that we have for the study of emptiness, okay, by Chandakirti, Master Chandakirti, not to be confused with the other Kirti, which is Dharmakirti, and I used to get them confused all the time. Sometimes I read the Library of Congress listings. We're working on them nowadays, and they confused them all the time too. Anyway, Chandakirti's opening lines, he bows down to love, to Nyingje, okay? He bows down to love. In Sanskrit, karuna, right? This is love. This is technically not the same as bodhicitta, because bodhicitta has love and, compassion and love. This is more like compassion. The definition of nyingje is that you want to take the suffering away from other people. That's the flavor of compassion. I should have translated it as compassion, okay? This is compassion. It wants to take other people's pain away. Then there's the thing called jamba, which is maitra, like love, maitreya. And it wants to give people nice things. So there's two elements of bodhicitta, and these are two prerequisites for bodhicitta. You want to take away people's pain, and you want to give them all the nice things. Okay? I'm not getting into that today, but I just want you to know that there's three kinds of nyingje, and I think it's helpful here. we are talking about the third, we've now got to the third point in the Buddha's answer to Subhuti. Because what did he say? Huh? No, first it was however many beings there are, get them to nirvana. We talked about nirvana. But nobody gets there. Okay? Nobody gets there. What's the connection between being a bodhisattva and nobody getting there? You know, nobody reaching nirvana. When everybody reaches nirvana, nobody reaches nirvana. It sounds very mystical. Okay. There are three kinds of nyingje. There are three kinds of compassion. And first one is called say Semjen, Tsamla, Mikpa. Okay. Semjen means living beings, sentient beings. I'm not too crazy about sentient beings because I've never seen it in the New York Times. Okay. I don't even know if the word sentient is used in normal English. Don't think so. There is sentient life on Mars, only in that one case. Seriously, Tsamla means just a normal living being. Okay? Mikpa means focusing on them. Focusing on a normal living being. Okay? What it means is this is a kind of love that if you are just a normal person, that you feel for another living being. Like you're looking at them and saying, gee, I wish they didn't have cancer. You know? I wish they didn't have that. That's a Semjen Tsamla Mikpe Nyingje. That's compassion. That's just focusing on a plain old person. Okay, nothing fancy about that kind of compassion. It looks at a person and says, I wish they didn't have cancer. Okay? Second one, say Chola, Mikpe, Nyingje. Okay, they connect together. This kind of compassion is also focusing on living beings. Okay, first thing to say, it's focusing on the same thing. The same basic thing, living being. It also wants the same thing for that being. What is that? Wants to remove their suffering, wants to remove their pain. But this one has an extra element. Cha here, Dharma, which means the nature of those beings. It's looking at the nature of those beings at the same time that it looks at those beings. This is their subtle natures, but not their emptiness, okay? Their other subtle natures. For example, the fact that they are impermanent. You know, it looks at a person and says, this is a dead man. You know, it can't help looking at people and saying, this person's dead. This person's as good as dead. The minute this person was born, they started to die. And it's a very kind of tender and also depressing way to look at people. You're just going around looking and saying, you know, let's see, this guy, he's overweight, heart attack, 2 years, 3 years at the best. You know, this person looks healthy. I'd say, oh, probably going to get cancer in this organ or this organ. You know, I mean, it walks around looking at people and is totally aware of their impermanence, even as it looks at them. It cannot feel any kind of hatred or anger towards people, because the minute it focuses on somebody, it like see them in a coffin already. You know, and it can't feel anything bad towards those people, because it just looks at them and sees them as dead meat. You know, this person is dead. You know, how close is this person? You know, and it's obsessed with that. You know, it sees the impermanence of beings that it loves. It's loving somebody, wishing they didn't have that tooth problem, but at the same moment aware that this person is as good as dead. You know, and can't feel any kind of hatred or trouble towards that person. You know, just walks around New York City saying, this one's dead, this one's closer. You know, and it's loving all those beings. It's feeling compassion for all those beings. It's also aware of more subtle impermanence of those beings. And it's also, which is the fact that they change moment to moment. You know, this thing is looking at this person and saying, you know, 20-year-old, healthy, pretty, ugly, 40-year-old. It sees the same thing at the same time. It knows that things are changing like that. It can't help but look at something and say, this thing is going to fall apart. You know, this thing is dissolving before my eyes. You know, this person who looks so healthy and happy and they got their new suit on and they got their new job is as good as old. You know, and it sees them and thinks that at the same time. It can't, it's kind of unhappy, I don't know unhappy, but it's not, I don't know. It just can't help seeing what's going to come to these beings. And I almost don't like to say what's going to come, because according to Buddhism, the destruction of your health and the destruction of your vitality and the destruction of whatever beauty you may have and the destruction of your own intelligence was created when your intelligence was born and when your beauty was born and when your body was born. Buddhism says there's no external cause needed to destroy you. You know, once you've started to exist, once you got a new job, you lost it. You know, once you got handsome or pretty, you're ugly. You know, once you're healthy, you're sick. And it doesn't take any other thing to make you sick than being healthy. You see, it's very radical. There's a big debate about it. But the bottom line is it does not take any external factor to make a healthy person sick. It's just that they're healthy makes them sick. It's very radical. And this state of mind sees that directly. This state of mind is looking around at people and thinking anything good about them and seeing that they're going to die or they're going to get sick just by being who they are. Okay. And that's the second kind. Okay.
Ordinary people have that state of mind?
You have to practice it, especially subtle impermanence you cannot perceive now. I mean, to truly see that a person is dissolving from moment to moment takes a lot of meditation. And you will see it. And it comes before the perception of emptiness. And it's called the perception of gross impermanence, which is like you drop a cup and it breaks. It doesn't take an Arya to see that. It doesn't take a genius. But to look at somebody and realize that they are dissolving requires like some kind of deep meditative experiences. You know. And you will get it. It will come. And it's easier to see than emptiness. Okay? And much easier to see than the subtle workings of karma. Okay? Ooh. You guys are getting good. Okay, number 3. Sound familiar to anybody? Okay. If those of you who are Tibetan Buddhists, if there's a mantra or a praise of Jetsun Kappa that starts out, Migme Tsewe Derchen Chenme Sik. In fact, its name is Miktsema. You know, Migme Tsewe Derchen Chenme Sik, Chime Kimbe Wambo Jambeya. Okay? And that's the ultimate kind of nyingje, the ultimate kind of compassion. Okay? Mik means focus, right? We had it before. Me means what? Doesn't see anything. Nobody gets to nirvana. Sound familiar, right? Okay. Doesn't see anything. Nobody gets to nirvana. Doesn't see anybody getting to nirvana. doesn't see any sentient being, and doesn't see anybody getting to nirvana. Is that okay? What's it mean? Doesn't see them as self-existent, okay? Doesn't see them as self-existent. Okay, it looks at living beings. By the way, assuming it already has the first two kinds, right? It's looking at somebody and saying, you know, I wish this person didn't have cancer. And then it's also thinking, I wish this person who's dissolving before my eyes didn't have cancer. And then it's also thinking, I'm wishing this person who is sitting before my eyes, dissolving, didn't have cancer. And by the way, they're not self-existent either. I understand their true nature. You know. So here you get the link, right? This is the big link up. Between what and what? I love the answer, but it's the wrong one. Between what? Yeah, between compassion and emptiness, you know. I mean, here you have the big link up. You are looking at a person, wishing they didn't have suffering, understanding that they are dissolving by the moment, and understanding, by the way, their dependent origination, which we'll talk about. And then it's also understanding their emptiness. Now, can it be a direct perception of their emptiness at that moment? No. Cannot be, okay? Unless you are a Buddha. Only a Buddha can perceive both realities at once. But if you're a normal person, and I don't know way to know, this is the big, you cannot be perceiving their emptiness directly at that moment, and also wishing that they could get out of suffering, and also seeing that they are dependent origination, and also seeing that they are dissolving before your eyes, and also seeing that they're dead. And I don't say dying, I say dead, okay? It's very subtle. And this compassion looks at you and sees you at the funeral parlor, you know. It doesn't see, oh, this poor guy is getting old, you know. It actually looks at you and sees you dead. And feels, you know, so why should I hassle this person? He's already in this wood box. There's already these relatives who got dragged there wearing their suits, you know, who wish they could be somewhere else. It has that kind of compassion. So this is the link between a bodhisattva, love, and seeing emptiness. And it's based on having seen their emptiness before, okay? You have understood their emptiness. Maybe you've even seen it directly. And now you're looking at them and saying, I love this person. I wish they didn't have suffering, you know, like that. Yeah, question?
See, before you become a Buddha, it seems like each of these three would be separate mind moments.
That's a very good question. It's a really good question.
They're not organically linked.
Yeah. There's a big debate about it. I mean, the monastic textbooks get into a huge debate about it. And I think they come out with about what you said, and it's a good point. It's a very good point. It's true. You know, you cannot have, they're called namba, you cannot have these three aspects in your mind simultaneously at the same moment. There's a big argument about it, you know, is it possible? And they're almost saying like you have to revolve between, you know, you have to be, a spiritual advanced person would have the latter two. But could they even, can you think of a person's emptiness and also think of their dissolvingness in the same millisecond? No. One human mind cannot do both. Dharmakirti proved that. Yeah, must. Okay, yeah.
To have the third kind of compassion, is it necessary to see it directly, or is an intellectual understanding?
It seems to say intellectual is okay. It seems to say intellectual is okay. I'll check. As I remember, it just said perceive. I don't think it said perceive directly. I don't think it said perceive directly. Okay. So that brings us to why nobody achieves nirvana. Okay, that's the kind of love that bodhisattva has, and he's realizing that nobody achieved nirvana. Okay, if he thought somebody achieved nirvana, he wouldn't be a. Is that true? Do you have to have an understanding of emptiness to be a bodhisattva?
No, you can't. It's rare to achieve Bodhicitta before you see emptiness.
Yeah, according to the theory of the five paths, you achieve bodhicitta on the first path. You don't see emptiness directly till path number 3. So it's not necessary for a bodhisattva to see emptiness directly, okay? That's not necessarily true. Ooh, are you allergic to bodhisattva? No. Do you need, here, rescue me. Here, do another. Okay. Not necessary, okay? You can be a bodhisattva without understanding emptiness directly. So the Buddha must be talking about Arya bodhisattvas, okay? The Buddha must be talking about Arya Bodhisattvas. Okay? You ain't no Arya Bodhisattva if you think that somebody achieved nirvana. Okay? Yeah?
On the third one, focusing on living beings, seeing them as not being self-existent.
We're going to talk about...
Doesn't really generate any compassion.
No. No. You can see, there's a huge debate about whether the lower two tracks, Hinayana practitioners, can see the emptiness of a living being. There's a huge debate about it. And the Swatantrika, the lower part of the Madhyamika, say that the selflessness that they see, they don't call it emptiness. The selflessness that they see is not as cool or as subtle as the selflessness that Mahayana practitioners see, which is called emptiness. They don't even deign to call the lower two tracks object emptiness. They say there's dame taraksum, which means 3 levels of subtlety to emptiness. And then the highest school, Prasangika, says, wrong. Remember the diamond, it's all pure. If you see it, you either see it or you don't see it. It's not like you see it halfway or something like that. All emptinesses are equal. And this theory that Hinayana people can only see a lower emptiness and Mahayana people see a higher emptiness is wrong. And the proof of that is very interesting. What? How can you prove that lower arhats have seen real emptiness, total emptiness?
There can't be a higher and a lower ultimate reality.
Well, now give me a better proof. Why can we say that lower arhats must have seen pure emptiness? Because they achieved nirvana. And you can only achieve nirvana, which is the permanent cessation of your mental afflictions, if you have seen emptiness.
Can you use this third one?
We're going to do it right now.
Oh, okay.
We're going to do it right now. Yeah.
You just said that you can do cheat on the first half, but you also said, not here, but in New York, that well, you come out of seeing emptiness directly, you have the first moment of real bodhicitta. So
I didn't say first.
I thought I heard you say that.
You might have heard first. But it is an extraordinary moment of bodhicitta.
Okay.
That moment of bodhicitta qualifies as the first bodhisattva level. So you could distinguish between the bodhicitta that is on the first bodhisattva level and then the one which is before that, the ones that are before that. Technically, what I'm trying to say is that you can achieve bodhicitta before you see emptiness directly. Technically you can, and you do.
And that
More
is
specifically,
real bodhicitta.
it is a real bodhicitta. There's also a false bodhicitta before that. It's called sugarcane bodhicitta, okay? So there's sugarcane bodhicitta before the first path, okay? And then there's real bodhicitta on the first path. And then there's a person who has reached the bodhisattva bhumi's bodhicitta on the third path, and that one is cool. That one is really something. That's the perfection of wisdom.
Yeah, so on the
Yeah.
first part you get the one that is renunciation applied to others.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, but the one on the third path is infinitely superior, because that person is now an Arya having bodhicitta, and that qualifies them for the first bodhisattva bhumi. They're now on the first bhumi. Okay, you don't get to be on the first bhumi just by getting plain old bodhicitta. You get to be on the first bhumi when you have bodhicitta and you see emptiness directly. Okay, and that's just a totally different experience of bodhicitta. Okay, this is the answer to Dr. Brown's question. Okay, and this is the last thing we have to do. And I won't stretch it out for an hour, so you might get out early. I could try. Nah. No. Where was that? I wanted to bring up Gakcha, okay, which is on your homework. That always gets people to listen. Say Gakcha. Gotcha. Gotcha. I like it because it sounds like gotcha. You know. when the Buddha says in the DiamondCutterSutra that nobody achieves nirvana, and when you hear that Buddhism says there's no self, then I think, to me, the human mind swings off of Madhyamika, the middle path, to the extreme of thinking, I don't exist, people don't exist. When they say the self doesn't exist, then the mind swings to the extreme. By the way, Madhyamika is over here in the middle. It means middle. The mind swings over to here and says, oh, somehow people don't exist. You know, they look to me like they exist, and somehow they don't exist. And if I could figure out how they didn't exist, I would be happy. You know, I would reach nirvana. You know, there's something going on here. All my life I thought people existed. And now the Buddha says, nobody gets to nirvana. Nobody exists. And it really looks to me like this room is full of people. So I must be doing something wrong, you know. And the books all say self doesn't exist, you know. So I think you have to get into this, to what do they mean when they say the self doesn't exist. Because you don't want to be over here in the extreme, because when you're in the extreme, you're off the Madhyamika, middle. Madhya means middle. Uma, it means to be in the middle. You're over here in the extreme. And that's a big mistake. Okay, that's a true mistake. First of all, do the living beings in this room exist? Do the selves in this room exist? Clinton, you ready? Okay, which means no living beings exist in this room. Yeah, he says, "Stamadum," which means stupid. Yeah. Which means wrong. It means wrong. Okay. Are you telling me there are sentient beings in this room? So are you telling me there are cells in this room? Yeah, sure. Yotte means why do they exist? And then you can give me the definition of existence.
Because
Seme mikbecher. Okay, say seme mikbecher. Yimata. Yeah, okay, and he gave the right answer. There are sentient beings in this room. Why? Because there are cells in this room. Why? Because you can see them. Okay. Okay. No, that's the answer. Okay. But it's not just see, it's sema, with a pramana, with a sema, which means, sema means a correct perception. You know, you're not, correct implies only the following. It's not very mystical, okay? You're not drunk, you're not stoned, you're not on acid, you're not under the influence of some incredible mental affliction like jealousy. You know, you're in a normal state of mind, relatively speaking, and you see people here. Ergo, they exist. That's the definition of existence in all of Buddhism. You know, if you can perceive them with a normal perception, they exist, and that's all you need to prove they exist. So does the self exist? Of course it exists. There's a self that exists, and there's a self that doesn't exist. So what's a self that doesn't exist? And I think it gets into Dr. Brown's question of, which I think was going to be your question before I interrupted you. What is that state of mind seeing? When you say that it sees sentient beings as not being self-existent, what exactly is, how can I get that? You know, how could I get that? How could I be seen? Am I supposed to see like they don't have a face or something? Or, you know, am I supposed to think they're empty on the inside? Or what does that mean? Okay, and to understand that, as Master Shantideva said, you have to say, that's the Shantideva, one of his most famous lines. Okay? Until you understand what a self-existent thing is, you will never understand what emptiness is. Because emptiness is the missingness of self-existent thing. Okay? Now, we got to talk a little bit about self-existent things, and we'll just take a few minutes. And we did it in Philadelphia, so if you're in Philadelphia, please excuse. Use the same example. Is there a two-headed purple elephant in this room? You know, in this room. You didn't look behind you, you didn't check. You know, okay? I mean, full-size, two-headed purple elephant in this room. You know, is there one? And you say no. Okay, that is the emptiness of two-headed purple elephants in this room. Okay, now the importance of the example is the following. Do they exist generally anyway? Two-headed purple elephants in our planet, in normal zoos, okay? No, okay? No. And that's the first important thing to understand about emptiness. Emptiness means the absence of a thing which never existed anyway and never could exist. You know, it's not like the absence of something, like the absence of new food in your stomach right now. Okay? It's not like that. New food could have existed, it just doesn't happen to be existing right now. But two-headed purple elephants never was, never will be, and ain't here either. And the fact that they're not here is the emptiness of two-headed purple elephants in this room. Okay? And the point is that a self-existent thing couldn't exist anyway. So it's a little hard to describe. Okay? Because it don't exist anyway. You know, they say in Tibetan, does a rabbit's horn, the horns that normally grow on rabbits, are they 6 inches or 12 inches? You know, you know, there's this debate in the debate ground, you know. And these 12-year-olds are going at it all night, you know. By the way, if you understood Tibetan, you'd understand they're saying the same thing over and over again. You know? No, it's 6 inches. No, it's 8 inches, you know. You know, so Gakja means self-existent thing, okay? Gakja means the thing we deny, the thing whose existence we deny. Okay, Gakja means the thing whose existence we deny, the thing we deny. Okay, the thing we say, it don't exist, it never existed. Okay. To understand the Gakja, you must understand dependent origination. Okay. You must understand how a thing could exist in dependence if you're going to understand how it couldn't exist in independence. Okay? You got to understand how a thing could be dependently existing before you can understand how it couldn't be self-existing. Okay? So we're going to go through dependent origination. And then the opposite of that is going to be Gakja. Okay? If something didn't have dependent origination, if something didn't depend on other things, oh, that would be my two-headed purple elephant. Wait, I'll get him, you know. Oh, you want a thing that doesn't dependently originate? You want something that does not exist through dependence? Well, then say whatever you want. You know, it doesn't matter because they don't exist. You know. Okay, so what does that mean? The opposite of a dependently originating thing is a non-existent, self-existent thing. Okay? That's what we deny. So we got to talk about dependent origination. A big, long word. I wish to God somebody had translated it differently in the beginning. I tried for a while. I gave it up. You could say dependence, okay? Maybe better. Occurring in a dependence, maybe. But it's difficult. Anyway, there's 3 levels of dependent origination. Okay? By the way, I didn't get off my pledge to you not to get philosophical. This is all necessary. And you'll see in the afternoon session. We have to discuss dependent origination if you're going to reach that little box. You know, if you're going to see emptiness directly, you must understand the opposite of self-existence, which is dependent origination. Okay? It'll all get relevant, okay, I promise. I don't want to waste your time. If somebody dies between now and this afternoon, I'll feel real guilty, okay? 3 levels. There are 4 great schools of Buddhist philosophy from ancient India. 2 2 Hinayana schools, 2 Mahayana schools. And the first school is like Abhidharma school by Bhashika. You don't have to write this down. The second school is called Sautrantika because they follow the sutras, very strict, certain sutras. And then the third school is called the mind-only school. Okay? But all those schools together, those first 3 schools, they all say dependent origination means things depend on their causes. And the Gakja, or a self-existent thing, or a 2-headed purple elephant, or a rabbit with a 6-inch horn or a 12-inch horn, would be anything that didn't what? Depend on its causes. Okay? That thing is impossible. That thing is a self-existent thing. And that's what self-existence means. The opposite of dependent origination in this sense. Something that doesn't depend on its causes. You know, an eraser that could be here without any causes at all. That's a self-existent eraser. No factory, no plastics place, no wholesaler, no store, nobody had to go buy it. You know, nobody had to cut the wood for the top. The tree didn't have to grow. It's just here, okay? And your mind grasps that, and that causes you all your suffering. And so long as you think that, you will never be able to get rid of your mental afflictions and reach nirvana, okay? Now, how you get from that, to me, always used to be a big problem. You know, I say, first of all, I'm quite well aware that the tree had to grow, and that, you know, I had to go to the store to buy it, and somebody else had to go get it. And I don't think of the eraser as self-existent. And I don't have a problem with that. And even if I did have a problem with that, I don't see why that would cause my mental afflictions. Okay, so I don't believe in grocery stores. You know, how does that give me anger? You know, so I don't believe in trees. I think all wood like a kid with the milk in the city, you know. Like, okay, so I don't understand about cows. But how does that give me anger, hatred, desire, jealousy? How does that throw me into zillions of years of suffering? I don't get it. Doesn't seem very relevant to me, okay? I used to have a problem going from dependent origination to okay, this is the problem of your zillions of lifetimes, you know. I don't get it. I don't get any connection, okay? I'm not going to answer that question right now, okay? The next school up, which is the bottom half of the 4th school, which is the Madhyamika Svatantrika, they say, your definition's pretty good, but it's not comprehensive. You're missing some things, which is what? There are things that exist that don't have causes, okay? There are things that exist that don't have causes, okay? One is space itself. Space itself. Is this eraser standing in space? When I remove the eraser, is there still space there? Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether space is occupied, occupado, or whether it's absento, you know, empty. It doesn't matter. You know, I can occupy it or I can withdraw from it, but the space will always be there. How about the space which is occupied by the planet Earth? Is it there? The Vaibhashika would say, yeah, where do you think the planet Earth is? It's filling the space. What happens when the sun novas and burns up Earth and it's dissolved into ashes? Space is still there. Space never changes. It is filled or unfilled, but its quality never changes. Okay? That word never changing has been mistranslated in Buddhism as impermanence for decades. Okay? All right? It never changes. Okay? Does this eraser have its own emptiness? When the eraser is destroyed, does the eraser's emptiness go away? Yes. Is that emptiness impermanent? Yeah. So impermanence is a mistranslation. Just if you're interested, okay? It is impermanent, it's not changing. The emptiness of this eraser, its quality never changes. The quality of space never changes. It's either filled or not filled, but it's always perfectly spaced. Okay? So things depend on their causes. Now, so if you want to spread it to everything, even those things that don't have causes, let's say things depend on their parts. Now the Madhyamika Svatantrika is happy. School number 4A. School number 3.5. They're happy. They say, okay, now we got everything. We covered everything. Now we even covered space. Does space have its own parts? Yes. They say north, south, west, up, down. It has directions. Okay. It also has its parts in the sense of past space, present space, and future space. Those are all parts of what we call space. Okay. So they say that's the dependent origination. Now, I still don't see how, when I focused on this eraser, if I fail to think of it as the whole of its parts, somehow that's going to give me jealousy and anger and hatred, you know. I mean, what's the opposite? If I go around thinking of its parts, you know, somebody told me that one time. I saw it in a Harvard dissertation doctoral thing. It said, next time you have desire for a girl, think of her as atoms, you know. And, you know, I was very interested in this question because I'm a monk. I'm supposed to work on that. So I'm like, okay, think of them as atoms, you know. And it doesn't work. You know. Of course, I mean, do you have to be constantly aware that it has parts and that somehow is going to change your anger and your hatred, you know? Is that the clue, you know? Is that why understanding emptiness destroys my mental afflictions, you know? Then there's a third level, okay? The Madhyamika Prasangika, the highest school of the four, school 4B, okay? They say things are dependent when they depend on, or because they depend on, I'm going to call it projections, okay? I had a student rightly come to me and say, when you say projections, are you saying there's really nothing out there and we are like creating it all with our minds? You know, like you see some Lobsang Rampa third eye thing, you know, like these rays coming out of your forehead and projecting the world and you're looking at them, you know. And that's not exactly what I mean by projections. What I mean is there is certain data. Let's say you're looking at a pot on the stove and there's certain data that is presented to you. That data is called round, white, black, long, sticky thing, meaning the thing that you're going to think of as the handle, but that's before handle, okay? Black, long, thin, with a white, round, shiny, standing on a red, circular thing. And that's all there is, okay? That sense data called white, round, shiny, and black, skinny, long, is presenting itself to your perceptions, to your mind. And then your mind organizes it in a certain way. Your mind images it in a certain way. It takes all those pieces and it glues them together in a certain way. That's what I'm calling projection. If you want to, you could say it gluing it together in a certain way, imaging it. But your mind takes that sense data and organizes it in a certain way. And then it thinks to itself, what? It thinks to itself, no, it's white shiny. Pot, okay? It thinks to pot, a pan, a pot on the stone. It thinks pot. Okay, up to that moment that your mind organized it in a certain way and said to, by the way, you don't have to say to yourself, there's a mistake. Some people think that the process called imputation means you must name the thing, you know, you must say, pot, pot, pot. You know, not necessary. Imputation or labeling means the process of organizing it mentally and imaging it as pot. And that's enough. You don't have to even know the word for pot to image a pot. You see, imputation is not necessarily what we call names. Label or naming in Madhyamika means you are organizing it and thinking of it in a certain way. You are imaging pot in your mind. Okay?
So you're thinking of its function.
Not necessarily.
So you
Not
see
necessarily.
object if you don't know function.
It's like object, yeah. Although function's closely related. There's a big debate about it, as usual. But the point is this: all you really saw was white, round, shiny, black, thin, long. Okay? But your mind interpreted it or organized it as pot. And whether you heard pot in your mental ear or not, you did see pot in your eye, in your mental eye. You saw pot. And you mistake that pot for those. You think there's a real pot out there. You mistake that image for a pot that's out there on the stove. But all that's really out there on the stove is white, shiny, round, black, long, thin. Okay? And your mind is interpreting and organizing it into a thing called pot. Does it work? That's another question. Okay, of course it works. How does that stop your mental afflictions? Am I supposed to be like paralyzed all the time? Like, white, shiny, round, black, thin, long, Like, am I supposed to take like 20 minutes to make a pot of tea, how's that going to remove my mental afflictions? I mean, this used to be, to me, a burning question. I could not stand it when I heard all these explanations of emptiness. And it didn't apply to my life. It's supposed to stop my mental afflictions. I don't get it. Okay, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to constantly keep my mind on the fact that it's really just round, shiny thing? Who cares? This sounds like the philosophy back at Princeton University, These guys don't have anything to do and they grow these long beards and they sit around and drink brandy and talk about these things, I mean, so what? Is that going to make me happy? Is that going to get me to nirvana? Is that going to stop my death and my old age and my bald spot? Is that going to do that? And you don't see why. You can't see why. The point is this, and this is what's happening when you see the living being. Does everyone organize white, shiny, round, black, long, thin in that way?
No.
Let's say you're in another realm, okay? Let's say you're living in another realm. Let's say you're living in the next realm down from the human realm, which is what? Animal realm. Which, by the way, our normal perception is restricted to those two realms. There are 6 realms. We can only see 2. So I'm not going to ask you to go out of any realms that you're familiar with. Let's stick into animal realm, human realm, which is the only ones you can easily see. To an ant who's crawling up to that white, round, shiny, black, thin, long, does that ant conceptualize it as a pot? And here's where function comes in too. I mean, does its mouth start to water thinking of the Earl Grey tea it's about to have? It cannot. It cannot organize that data into that thing. To that being in that realm, that same sense data is an insurmountable burning mountain of iron. It might as well be the hell. It might as well be an obstacle in hell. Here's this burning, blazing, bright red iron floor. Sounds like hell. I mean, hell's supposed to be like that. And he's running barefoot across it, which is hell's supposed to be like that. And there's this huge, insurmountable mountain that if you suddenly get up to the top and jump over to the other side, you're suddenly into this pool of burning water, which is hell is supposed to be like that too. So this being is perceiving those same data as a hell realm, basically. I mean, not as a real hell realm, because that hurts a lot worse. But to that being, that looks like that. So how does that help me get rid of my mental afflictions? So who cares that an ant running across the stove sees it as this burning iron mountain? Who cares? What's the point? Why does he see it differently than I do? He's forced to by his past karma. And I say forced. You must say forced. Okay? He's forced to by his past karma. It's not like he can say, I would rather see this as a teapot. I'd rather see this as a sugar cube in my nice little hole under the ground. You know? I don't want to see it this way. Does he have a choice? No. Something in your mind is forcing you to organize the information that way. In fact, if you think about it, that creates his realm. That is causing his realm. That's why he lives in another realm. The animal realm was created by a certain number of beings who have the same karma to see it the same way. And there is no other animal realm. There is no other place called an animal realm. It's the collective experience of a certain number of beings being forced by their own karma to see the same data that we see in a different way, and that is the animal realm. There ain't animals running around. There's no animals running around. Nobody reaches nirvana. Sounds familiar, yeah? There's no animals. It's certain beings. There's no animal realm. It's certain beings being forced to see the same things that you and I see in a different way. That's all. There ain't no other place. You know, now you're starting to get relevant. Yay! You know, Madhyamika becomes relevant. You know, that was like a holy grail for me. You know, emptiness. Now it has something to do with my life. You know, now it's something interesting. You know, if that's the meaning of Madhyamika, if that's the point of emptiness, is that two different beings can see shiny, white, round, black, thin, long, and organize it because of their karma in two totally different ways. Now you're getting interesting. Now I can see something happening. You know, now you're talking about karma. You know, now you've gone on to karma, and we'll talk more about that. And let's leave it there. But just to repeat, 3 kinds of dependent origination. If you were in one of the first 3 schools, and I came up to you and said, describe to me a self-existent thing, you would say, oh, it's a thing which does not depend on its causes. Okay, I'm saying, Don Brown, what's a self-existent thing? You say, I'm in the lower 3 schools, it's a thing that doesn't depend on its causes. It's an eraser that had no factory, no tree, nobody bought it, there wasn't any store, it's just there. If you're in the next school, a gotcha, a self-existent thing, is a thing that doesn't depend on its parts. If you're in the highest school, a thing that doesn't depend on your projections as forced upon you by your own past karma. And again, projection means a way of thinking about the same sense data that somebody else also gets. By the way, it doesn't have to be sense, it can be mental too. Okay? A self-existent thing, according to this school, would be a thing whose existence did not depend on your projections as forced upon you by your past karma. That is a purple 2-headed elephant. That thing doesn't exist. But according to Madhyamika, you perceive everything in the universe that way. You have never had a correct thought in your life. Okay? According to Madhyamika, until the moment you see emptiness directly, you have not had a correct or an accurate perception in your whole life. Period. Never. Very interesting. You've had valid perceptions, but not accurate perceptions. Okay? You saw all that you could see. It was okay. But it was wrong. I mean, valid means, given what you knew, you were perceiving the best you could. We draw this distinction at work, at least I do. When my boss says, why did we lose $1 million on that deal? I say, think about it. Given all the things I knew at the moment that I made that decision, was it the right decision? He has to say yes. Was it valid? Given all that you knew at that time, it was the best decision you could have made. So I say, then, Mr. Boss, Ofer, his name, it was the right decision, right? And he says, hell no, we lost $1 million. You know? So you got to distinguish between valid and correct. Okay, it's a pramana. You know, you've had lots of pramanas. Is this an eraser? Yes. Are you people? Yes. Am I standing here? Yes. Those are all valid. Reasonable perceptions. Are they correct? No. Why? They are infected by believing that things are not this. They have always been infected by believing that things don't exist this way. And even bugs think that, and even ants think that, and amoebas think that. Every sentient being who's not a Buddha, their mind is infected by this. And they see things wrong all the time, until the moment you see emptiness directly. And that causes your suffering. That triggers suffering. How that happens, we'll talk about it. Okay, but at least you got it up to dependent origination, all right? Tomorrow we'll talk more about how that happens. Yeah.
So that would be the answer to the third kind of